You are walking through one of the busiest airports in the world. Thousands of people pass you without a second glance. A businessman rushing to catch his flight. A little girl holding her father's hand. An elderly woman quietly reading a book while waiting at the gate. A teenager laughing with his friends. A young couple saying goodbye before one of them boards a plane. To you, they are just strangers. You will probably never learn their names, never hear their stories. In a few minutes, they will disappear into the crowd, and you will forget almost every face you saw. Then someone standing beside you says something that makes you stop walking. They point toward the crowd and say, "One of these people should not exist." You laugh. It sounds impossible. They are obviously standing right there, but they shake their head and explain that they are not talking about biology or medicine. They are talking about probability. The chain of events that created one of those people was so unbelievably unlikely that changing a single moment anywhere in history would erase them forever. One different decision, one missed train, one unexpected storm, one ancestor who turned left instead of right, one conversation that never happened, and that person would never have been born. You look at the crowd again. Nothing has changed, yet somehow every face suddenly feels different, which makes you wonder, who is the rarest human that could possibly exist? And what if the answer has been hiding in plain sight all along? Before we answer that question, we have to go back to a moment before you had a name, before your first heartbeat, before anyone knew you were coming. Picture a race unlike anything on Earth. Hundreds of millions of tiny cells all moving toward the same destination. Only one will get there first. Not two, not 10, just one. If a different one had arrived even a fraction of a second earlier, you would never exist. Someone else would. They might laugh differently, think differently, dream differently. They would be listening to this story instead of you. That sounds almost unbelievable. But it happened. Not once. Every single human who has ever lived began with a race that could only have one winner. And strangely enough, that was only the first impossible event. Now think about your parents. How did they meet? Maybe at school. Maybe through work. Maybe because a friend introduced them. It probably feels like a normal story. Until you start pulling on the threads. What if one of them had accepted a job in another city? What if one of them had been sick that day? What if they had arrived 5 minutes later? Would they have spoken? Would they have noticed each other? Would you be here? Humans love to imagine history through giant moments, great wars, powerful kings, famous inventions. But your existence may have depended on something much smaller. Someone deciding to stop for coffee, someone missing a bus, someone choosing a different seat. History rarely announces the moments that matter most. Sometimes it whispers them, and we only hear the echo generations later. Now imagine pulling on that thread even harder. Your parents had parents. They had parents too. Then their parents. Keep going. Soon you are no longer looking at a family photo. You are looking at thousands of lives, scattered across different places and different centuries. A farmer waking before sunrise. A fisherman hoping the sea stays calm. A mother trying to keep her child warm through a bitter winter. A traveler following a road with no idea where it will end. None of them knew you. None of them knew your name. Yet every one of them carried a tiny piece of your future, and every one of them faced moments where your story could have ended before it ever began. One harvest fails. One illness arrives. One river is crossed at the wrong time. One wolf pack wanders a little closer to the camp. One child never reaches adulthood. That is all it takes. The chain breaks. You vanish before history even has the chance to know you. Here is the strange part. When we think about history, we usually imagine the people who changed the world, the conquerors, the inventors, the rulers. But history is held together by millions of ordinary people whose names have completely disappeared. People who simply survived. People who fell in love. People who decided to start a family. People who woke up the next morning and kept going. The famous may have changed history. The forgotten created the future, including you. Now picture the Earth 10,000 years ago. There are no airports, no cities filled with glass towers, no phones, no maps telling people where to go. Just small groups of humans trying to stay alive long enough to see another sunrise. Every decision carries weight. Do you cross the river today or wait until tomorrow? Do you follow the animals or stay near the forest? Do Do you trust the strangers on the horizon or hide from them? Those choices were about survival. They were also quietly shaping people who would not exist for thousands of years, including you. That sounds impossible, until you remember that history is not a collection of separate stories. It is one long chain. Every generation hands the next one a world that is slightly different. Then comes another surprise. You might think your ancestors lived completely separate lives. They did not. Their stories were constantly colliding. A drought pushes one family into a new valley. A new trade route brings strangers together. A storm forces travelers to stop in a village they never planned to visit. Children are born. Families grow. Generations pass. History changes direction without anyone realizing it. We often imagine history being shaped by great plans. But most of the time it is shaped by ordinary people making ordinary choices on ordinary days. Which raises another question. If so much of your existence depends on chance, how much of history is really planned? Probably less than we like to believe. Humans enjoy the feeling of control. We make schedules, we set goals, we build calendars. Yet the biggest turning points in our lives often begin with something we never planned at all. A conversation, a coincidence, a wrong turn that somehow becomes the right one. Perhaps that is why history feels so unpredictable. It is not only the story of empires, it is the story of billions of tiny decisions, each one quietly changing the future for people who have not even been born yet. And the deeper you follow that chain, the harder it becomes to believe that any human existence could ever happen twice. So who is the rarest human that could ever exist? At this point, you might expect the answer to be a king, a genius, someone with the rarest DNA on Earth, or perhaps a person born under a set of impossible circumstances. But that is the trap hidden inside the question. We assume rarity belongs to a few extraordinary people. History suggests something very different. Think about every choice that led to this exact moment. Your parents meeting, your grandparents surviving, a family deciding to move instead of stay, a child recovering from an illness, a ship reaching land instead of sinking, a storm arriving one day later instead of one day earlier. None of those events seemed important at the time, yet together they built a path that only one person could ever walk. You. Now imagine trying to repeat that path. Every conversation would have to happen exactly the same way. Every journey, every decision, every birth, every moment of luck, every moment of heartbreak. History would have to replay itself perfectly. It cannot. History only moves in one direction. That means your existence is not just unlikely, it is unrepeatable. Now look at the people around you again. The stranger waiting at the traffic light, the cashier handing someone their change, the child chasing pigeons across a park, the old man feeding birds on a bench. Their stories are different from yours, but they were built the same way. Each one is standing at the end of a chain, stretching back through thousands of years. A chain filled with victories no one remembers, failures no one recorded, acts of courage that never appeared in a history book, small moments that quietly changed everything. Perhaps that is why humans are so fascinating. We spend our lives searching for extraordinary people. Meanwhile, we pass extraordinary stories every single day without noticing them. The technology around us has changed beyond recognition. Our ancestors hunted with stone tools. We carry computers in our pockets. They crossed deserts on foot. We cross oceans in a few hours. But beneath all of that, the same human instincts remain. We fall in love. We protect our families. We hope tomorrow will be better than today. We make choices without knowing who they will affect hundreds of years from now. That may be the most remarkable part of being human. Every ordinary day is quietly becoming someone else's history. Every conversation has consequences you will never see. Every act of kindness, every risk, every chance encounter. The future is being written by people who have no idea they are writing it. So who is the rarest human that could exist? There isn't one. There are more than 8 billion, because every person alive is the only version of themselves that history could ever produce. Not because they are the smartest, Not because they are the strongest, but because the road that created them has already disappeared forever. Maybe that is why every culture has searched for meaning. Deep down, humans have always sensed that life is more fragile than it appears. We just rarely stop long enough to see how fragile. The next time you walk through a crowded airport, a busy street, or a quiet park, try looking at people a little differently. Not as strangers, not as faces in a crowd, but as the final chapter of stories that began thousands of years ago. Stories that survived impossible odds just to arrive at this single moment. And perhaps the rarest thing in the world was never one extraordinary human. It was the simple fact that any of us are here at all.